Hey everyone.
What's up, guys? It's Chidulthood Airy Live. No, I'm too excited. But welcome back, you guys. Thank you for coming in again and tuning in again. Chidulthood.
So you're just gonna talk over me?
Sorry! Go ahead, Shy.
I mean, you could have did the introduction. You feel me? I ain't got no problem with that. But you should have. You feel me?
Just finish it up. Go ahead. Do what you do best.
Yeah, I think you did a good job.
Thank you.
Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. Mona did pop this off with some good energy. So that's what I like to see. Also, I have mint in my mouth. I know that's not professional, whatever, not, but I didn't have no time to make no tea, y'all. So yeah, she has midnight cap drinks. I have tea and midnight cap. But I didn't boil my tea enough in time, so y'all gonna have to deal with this mint today. Okay, honey? Because like we said, we're giving it to you real and live, baby, honey. So
yes,
you work with us.
Yes.
So our last video was answering the question, did we love our adoptive parents and families' blood or not? And the simple and short answers we gave was absolutely. Absolutely. Today, we want to discuss what were our previous thoughts in relation to our birth mother, the woman who gave birth to us. What was the stories we kind of told ourselves about who she was, who she is, were we interested or not? So we're going to spend time engaging with that question today.
Let's go. I'm going to let you go first because the other video I went first. So I'm going to let you take it away.
All right. So everyone, I would say, honestly, I didn't think a lot about my birth mother, like at length. But when I say that, I'm kind of telling like a miniature lie in that I didn't build up a story about who she was or what she did, and I didn't necessarily have feeling towards her in that way. But I'll expand. I did think about, as I was thinking about my self-identity, I thought about what it meant for her to give me up. And in the context of doing that, it showed up in these ways. I used to lay in my bed at night and I used to ask God. I used to say, God, why was I not good enough to be kept? I used to say, what was wrong with me? Why she gave me up, right? I asked a lot of those questions, and that actually is what grew my faith, because I spent a lot of time just talking to God in my bed. And I used to cry and just be like, my mother didn't love me enough and all this stuff. And honestly, like looking back, I laugh because that is not the perspective I had now. And I even knew then, I was just a child. But those were my beginning conversations with God. And when I would cry, obviously no one would answer me back directly. It's not like somebody was turning to me like, you have a mother, you are well taken care of. Like, your mother was on drugs. Like, thank God she didn't keep you. But as I began to pray on those things, God spoke back to me, and God said, I don't know what it was, but God was speaking back to me saying, like, you are enough. Look at all that I've given you. And that's when I began to change. That's when I kind of never engaged with that conversation with myself ever again. I never was like, oh, where's my birth mother? What is she doing? I just began to be so much more gratuitous with how my life panned out. I began to say things like, thank God my mother didn't keep me, because I do not want to grow up in a household where drugs were an active component. I don't know if I would have been fed. I don't know if she knew how to be a mother. Like, if she gave away 5 children before me, then I came along and all of a sudden she decides, hey, I'm going to try parenting. That wouldn't have been a good look for me. Like, you had 5 kids before me. So I don't know. I began to not search for those unanswered questions. And I realized that those weren't even questions I needed to ask, because, again, like I told you, I was well clothed, well fed. I was in a loving family. I knew my siblings. Thank God. We're actually very lucky to be adoptive kids who actually know our blood siblings. So I would say I kind of didn't, those were like the beginning foundations of like, okay, who's my birth mother, but I didn't necessarily resent her. I didn't have resentment from her because I don't know her. I don't know anything about her life. but I've always been interested. I've always asked myself, oh, that's crazy. Like all of us were born positive with cocaine in our system, right? And what that meant was that she was so much on drugs that she didn't even stop during pregnancy. So I was like, that's crazy. Like I used to be like, this woman, like, how could she do? She just kept doing the drugs. So I'm thinking, dang, she must have really been on these drugs heavy, because I'm the fifth one out of all these kids, and we all have the same story of being positive for drugs. So that's something I associated with her. I was like, dang, this lady is really struggling on the drug end, because she ain't stopped with her kids. You know, some people, they do drugs, but it's not that deep. So I'm like, that's how you know it's an addiction. All your kids have it in their system. So I'm like, yeah, that's critical. So that's something I associated with her. And then I always wondered what she looked like. I was like, I want to know what this lady looked like, though, to see if I look a little bit like her. But I never really thought like, oh, I'm not looking for her to be a mother like that. I already have that. I just kind of want to know. I want to know her story. I want to know. I want to know what she been through. I want to know what was her first introduction to drugs. I want to know like what was her family dynamic like. I want, I don't know, what it's like to give up children. I just want to know, honestly. But where it started was kind of asking those questions about identity and like, who is my mother, like why was I giving up, but kind of God unworked those things. I learned about my identity in Christ,
right?
How he loved me so much that he provided me with not only like a family that was going to surround me with love, but connection to my siblings. So I had so much gratitude in my heart, and I never began to look at those questions, because I think those questions came out of like brokenness, and I had to realize I wasn't broken, I was whole. Like, what? I'm whole. What am I searching for? So I just, I think that's like my answer to that.
Repeat the question so I can answer in the good format.
What were your initial thoughts about your birth mother, and then how did those evolve, if anything?
My initial thoughts about my birth mother. So, although my adopted mother, Alice White, told me that I was adopted, I still didn't completely understand what she meant by she was not our mother. Um, why I say that is because that was my mom. I didn't see nothing different. I always felt like, I was her child, and she treated me like a child, like her child. She gave me everything I felt like a child would want. So I didn't really know that I was adopted. So where it really kind of hit me, where I really understood, like I really didn't start, like, I guess my mind didn't start like fully developing until I was like 10, 11 years old. And that's when I moved to Bed-Stuy. And that's when I'm around different people. And this is, that's the big part of my story. That's where it really kind of begins, because that's when a lot of things like hit me all at once. So we moved to the project for the first time. Anyway, so, well, I just lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry. But so I was 10, 11 years old, and I watched a movie, you guys didn't laugh, called Holiday Heart. And that movie really resonated with me as a child, like OD bad, like OD, like to the bone. And that's how I saw my mother to be. I put my mother to be Holiday, who is the, who took care of the little girl, and Crackhead to be my birth mother, and me to be the little girl. So I was always, my sisters and brothers would always like, make that movie a big deal and say, this is how we were, this is how we were. This is how our mother was, because, we see ladies on drugs, and, our mother told us our mother was on drugs. Our adopted mother told us our birth mother was on drugs and stuff like that. So that's my image of how my life would have looked. And because I saw that movie, that made me resent my mother even more. It made me hate her even more, and also be grateful that I wasn't with her, because I was like, wow. Because look at me. I look at myself today and I'm like, dang, I'm so beautiful. Like, somebody would have really been raping me every day, and my mother would have been, getting drugs from it. And all my sisters, we're all some handsome and beautiful kids. So I just be thinking, like, if my mom did take us in, we probably would be raped just so she could get a high. So I think about that, and I think about that when I think about my mom, and that's when I really know I was adopted, like when I was around 11, 12 years old, and started, like, I guess, learning more and stuff like that. So now when it hit me, that I was adopted, it happened when I started high school. I was in the 9th to 10th grade. And what happened was I had this, I had this ex, this is my ex best friend. Her name is Kiara. Shouldn't have said her name, but she probably gonna watch this because I just recently added her on Facebook. Even though we're not best friends anymore. But anyway, she broke my heart when we was kids. What she did was she knew all my secrets, everything about me, and what she did was she told the entire Facebook that I was an adopted child, and that's when my heart was crushed. Like she hurt my heart, she broke my heart. I was just embarrassed. I was so scared. I was like, dang, I don't know what people are gonna think. So to go from that to being open and here on YouTube with the whole world is so crazy to me. So that's when me and her stopped being friends. That's when I was really upset with her because I'm like, why would you do that? Why would you tell people that? Now people gonna laugh at me and stuff like that. So me and her stopped being friends. And why I started liking the fact that my mother was my adopted mother, because I look at these people, like my ex-best friend and other people who have their real mothers in their life, but they can't even finish school, or they can't even do this or that. But my mother, she's my adopted mother, and she treated me like her own. She got me through school. She did everything a mother was supposed to do. So I always I used to compare my life with these people, and like, oh well, I'm the one that's adopted, but look at the things I'm getting. So so that's why I was, although I'm so grateful and happy for my adopted mother, I was still resenting my birth mother because of the fact that I have to go through that, and because of the fact that that's something that's happening in my life. I think that's embarrassing still sometimes to be. No. I'm lying. I don't feel like it's embarrassing to be adopted. I don't think that at all. But the fact that I don't know my adopted mother hurts me and is embarrassing because I don't know where I came from. I can't tell nobody comfortably, yo, I'm Cuban. Because I look at the last name Palacio, yeah, it's Cuban, but also it can be related in other Hispanic countries. So, maybe Italy. So stuff like that, so it kind of just hurts me because I'm like, I don't know my grandmother. And like I told you in other episodes, I don't know this, I don't know that. So that's why I still have this hate in my heart for her. Like I really, like honestly, until Cheyenne came around, I used to say, I don't want to meet her. I don't care about her. Why isn't she dead yet? Like, and that's really how I really hated her guts just because I'm in this predicament. So I just wanted, now that Shannon's around and I felt like kind of she gave me a little bit more clarity as to why I should, want to meet her or why we should meet her. But I'm open to meeting her. Before I used to say, well, if I met her, I will punch her in her face. But I won't do that now. I really just want to like meet her. Like Shannon said, I want to know who gave her first needle. I want to know like what happened, and I'm hoping that she can guide us in the right direction to our family. So, yeah.
You said so many things that I want to hit upon. The second thing I'll add is that I used to ask God. I used to pray and I used to say, God, please don't let my mother die before I meet her. And that was a prayer I prayed very often. I said, Lord, I would hate for her to die and for me never had to have been able to talk to her. That would be, and then how would we know? So even we wouldn't even know, like she would, and it's just, oh man, this like, first of all, there's so many layers to this conversation. I love it. One, because I get to hear what my sister like is thinking and what I'm thinking. And this is going to be an episode in itself. Like the images we associate with our personal lives, right? Because just like you watched Holiday Heart, one movie that's like amazing to me was what's the movie with the football player who got adopted and like he became famous? Y'all gonna know it. I know our viewers will know it. It has to come to me. He's a dark skinned guy, he's big, he's like a gentle giant. And
I know the name of it, but I can't think of it right now.
Yeah, so all right, in this movie, his mother is, on drugs and so forth. And so she wasn't able to keep them. But he went back and he visited her, and the new mother wanted to adopt him. And so they had a conversation about, this will always be your son and so forth, but I can provide him with these certain things. And a mom was basically, it's like them visiting her in her home. And of course, she's, still in the situation she's in. And so it's just so funny, the images that we try to correlate. because we know the stories we've heard and the identity. So you start marking, okay, this is what an addict might look like. So that's like our first try relevance, or trying to figure out what was her life like what might it have been to actually been an addict, and why that wouldn't have been in a good place for a child. And so you just be like, whoa, like, yeah, you see these images, and it is, I actually didn't know how startling the image of people who are like under addictive substances is to me. Like when I'm around it, in many ways it triggers me. It somehow feels like I'm like next to my mother in some respect, and that's kind of scary, because it's like, whoa, like it's just right there in your face. And I wasn't exposed actually to a lot of folks who are under the influence of addictive substances. So it's even scarier to be around people who are actively under that. I didn't grow up in a house where somebody is not always present up here because of alcohol and or drugs. So once I started to venture out and we started to hang out a little more, and those became present things in our regular neighborhoods and in projects in certain places, I was like, it's kind of startling. So it was like, whoa, like it just, I don't know, I relate to it in sadness. So that movie, Holiday Heart, I remember that movie as well. So that,
Yeah,
like, wow.
man. Get the bike, Holiday! No, I'm sorry.
But yeah, so it's so interesting how we connect images as we think about identity in reference to parents. And then, yeah, I used to pray that my mom, that I was like, Lord, don't let her die before I ever get to meet her. And
Nah, for real, I really don't want her to die. I'm not gonna lie. Like, Wanda, I know you're looking at me right now and us, but I really don't want you to pass away. Like, honestly, I'm not even showing my real passion right now, but the emotions I have for you is up and down all the time. And, I really hope that one day we do get to be face to face, and I don't want it to be when you die. I also want to add that we know you're alive. We spoke to our social worker, Nita Soto, and she told us that she visited you and she didn't want to give us any type of information for you because she told us that you didn't want to see us still. And you may have your reasons, but if we ask for you, I think it's time to come out.
honestly, if she had given Nita Soto a folder and say, this is the information on this person, this how many aunts you have, this is this, I would have been
At least
that. So, it's honestly, it's just about giving access to information, and that's what we're struggling with. Is that even as we've gone into databases and typed in a lot of things, but also we found out there's a lot of people named Wanda Palacio. We like, how many should there be?
Yeah.
It's like we have limited resources as we venture. Like we have certain information that could give us access, but then we meet like a little roadblock or access to certain information. So that's really what we seek. But yeah, we want to meet you. Whether or not you want to meet us, even if you don't want to meet us, are you afraid of judgment or what have you? It could be a very short conversation. Like it could be, here are photos of your grandparents. This is where I'm from. This is what I did. So hopefully we get somewhere on that end. But
right. Yeah, I think that I really most recently grew past a lot of hate, honestly. Because as I'm sitting here speaking about her, I don't feel that ill or that angry. I don't know why, but I used to feel really angry. So I think this is the best time.
And like you said, you felt angry.
And I just sorry to cut you off, but I want to know who my father is, okay? That is really big to me. I want a father. Like I want a dad. Like I really want to know who my father is. Like, come on. Like what girl don't want to know who her dad is? Like I want to know who my father is. So at least just tell me who my father is, please.
I was gonna say that, okay, so pinpointing on a point you brought up was the shame, right? That somebody could out you, right? That it was something that somebody could one up you on by saying you're adopted, right? Me growing up, I was never embarrassed to say that I was adopted. But I was embarrassed when my sibling at school would say, oh, like, we're not like really sisters. So that is what was a trigger for me. Is like, okay, yes, we're adopted, but anytime she would try to use something to create separation between us, that is what was the annoyance and the trigger. And like I said in my last video, language is so important. And when my sibling would do this in school, it just made me feel like why are you choosing this opportunity to create divisiveness between you and I? Like, who does that benefit? One, but also it hurts when somebody's like, they're not your sibling. You're growing up together. You done took showers together. Like, you live your whole life as a sibling. They're here telling somebody, oh, so that's somebody. It was just so complex. So, like I said, I had a lot of conversations with my siblings that I grew up with. And again, like I said, she grew up with a blood sibling of hers. So again, we're talking about these three. I'm the middle kid who doesn't share any blood with these two siblings, and they do. So it was another way to create division, but also create division in front of people who didn't care about us like the way we care about one another. Like, these is people in middle school. Y'all know middle school. People talk crap all the time, and it's just petty.
Yeah.
So it's like, why would you give them something to? So I spent a lot of time just thinking about who I wanted to be and my identity. And that actually led me to kind of lean on the culture of my adopted family, like even that the more, because I didn't have any questions. People would see my last name. Oh, your last name is Palacio. Like, where are you from? I say, that's my birth mother's last name. I have no idea. And so y'all see this flag back here. This is the one that I cling to as a kid, right? And going into Jamaica as a kid, having all your family members that you meet be from Jamaica, and then growing up in a Jamaican household, eating Jamaican food, like everything I knew was Jamaican.
Yes.
I used to write poems about Jamaica. I used to write poems about curry chicken, everything. Like, I used to, like, it's just, I had to embrace the culture that I was a part of, because I couldn't chase after something I had no access to. Much less you don't have no concrete answers. There's no concrete answer saying this, here, and that. And then even so, okay, it's still a distant culture, right? So even if we get someone who says, yes, Wanda Palacio, our grandparents, they're from Cuba. Okay, it's nice to know the origin and getting to know Cuban culture, but that's in relation to the culture we still grew up with. So it's like, yes, I still grew up Jamaican. Like, Jamaica is still something I'm an amp all day, every day. Now you just know your ethnic origins of, like, this is what I can trace back. So a lot of these questions about adopted kids, you got to talk to them about identity. You got to talk about what it means to be a part of this family. You got to make them feel like the culture that you have is their own, and that they can attach to themselves to that, because they're going to feel like they're wandering here and there, that they don't have no foundation.
Right. That's a fact.
But anyways, back to your feelings. Like, I want to hear more about that. Like, you said you have this hate, this disdain. You used to. Like, what was it like?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I used to really hate her. Like I said, because I have to go through this. Like, I really still, to this day, I don't feel, you say you feel complete. And yes, I'm so happy with how I am. I'm grateful for all the blessings that God has given me. But I don't feel complete because I don't know exactly where I come from, bro. And it's just so crazy. Like, what I was watching recently actually was the Underground. And after watching something like that, your mind is just blown away, and it just relating back to my life and just putting everything together. That's like, wow, like, this is relatable. Like, wow, like, I really wish I can tell stories about my grandmother, my great grandmother, and stuff like that. And that's why I'm making it I'm making it a fact. I'm making it a obligation for me to go to Cuba, because I have to put my feet on the soil of Cuba, if that's where I'm from. Yeah, it used to be a lot of hate. I used to be depressed. I used to cry, and it was really recently too. Like, when I say recently, I would say back in like 2017, I felt it the most a lot. Because yes, I love my mother to death, but I literally had to do a lot for myself, and not because my mother was poor and she couldn't help me. I was always someone who always wanted to do everything for myself. So I didn't get any help from nobody, from my mother, from my siblings, especially not my siblings. They never gave me anything. They never helped me with anything except for probably a talk. No offense to anybody, but I'm just saying that I've always been a very independent person. But it hit me when I did my first big move to Texas, Dallas, Texas. It hit me because I was at a very low point in my life, and I didn't have any help. I couldn't go to anybody for help. And when I did reach out to people, I couldn't get the help that I needed. I'm like, yo, this is why it's my birth mother's fault, because now I don't have an auntie, I don't have an uncle. I can't go to nobody's house. I can't do this. I don't have any support. My mother is my mother, and if she don't have it, then I'm stranded. I couldn't go to her sisters. My mother had sisters. My adopted mother had sisters. I couldn't go to them for help, and they wouldn't help me. You understand? So it's just all of that. It just hurt me because I didn't feel like I had the support that I needed and wanted. And Cheyenne, you're different. I mean, you were very, very, like, you, like, literally, I swear, I really love the fact, I admire your family. Like, you may grew up with a whole bunch of difficulties, but I'm going to tell you this. You grew up with a father in your household. You grew up with freaking older people that give you advice and help you do this, that, and the other. I don't know exactly what they did, but I'm of course, I'm the outside looking in. You feel me? But you at least had that support. I literally grew up with my mother and my siblings, and me and my siblings were siblings. Like I said, from growing up from 10 till now, we were not close at all. So I couldn't lean to my siblings for answers or anything. So they literally, my siblings they kind of be separated. Literally, when I was like 11 years old, and that's when I needed them the most. And they don't really understand that. They don't understand that. That's what I needed them the most, and I didn't have anybody, and it just hit me when, I was at a point, I was like I really was suicidal at that moment. Like, and that's deep. I was like really sad. I'm like, yo, I'm doing everything you wanted me to, God. Like, I'm going to school. I'm getting good grades. Like, God, what do you want from me? Like, I'm doing everything I'm supposed to do. Like, literally being a good person. I'm, traveling. I had joined the network marketing business. I'm like, yo, I'm doing everything. Like, why does everything keep on going odd for me? Like, why is it always the opposite? Like, what do I have to do? Like, how much do I have to work for it? Like, I'm by myself out here, God. Like, why don't you help me? I was just begging and praying God for something different because, I didn't have anybody. And that's when, back it was 2017, and I was fighting that demon for some time. And actually in 2018, when me and my boyfriend started going out, he actually helped me fight a lot of freaking battles. Like, I really have to give him all the credit because I remember when I moved to Dallas the second time to try again, it didn't work out too much the first time because I was going through some difficulties. But when I tried the second time, I moved to Dallas in September. I moved literally on my 24th birthday. I moved to Dallas, Texas again. And he didn't move until December. So I had 3 months to be out there by myself. And I was just going through it because I had to grind from the bottom, like literally grind, get jobs. Like, I had a job my first day out in Texas. And I was just crying and stuff like that. He was in New York, and he was just on the phone, just helping me with my mind and emotionally. And what he did to ease my mind was he actually went and we paid for some of the information remember the information I sent you, I emailed you? We paid for that. It was probably like $1 or whatever, but we paid for that. And he literally knocked on all of those doors. He went to the hospital. I forgot the name of the hospital. I could pull this information
Probably
right
is
now.
Harlem Hospital, because that's where
But it was it was like kind of like a psych ward or something like that. It was something like that. He went there, and they said they couldn't give him any information because they don't give patients information out, so they couldn't tell him that she was there or not. He went to like some house, knocked on the door. He went to the stores. I was on FaceTime. Well, I was on video with him on WhatsApp. He was videoing them. He was like, "Oh, do you know this lady Wanda? We had some picture of her. She took a picture with Yolanda, one of my oldest sisters, Yolanda. She took a picture with Yolanda, and he was just like, "Do you know this lady Wanda Palacio?" So he kind of like, a lot of tension went down from there. So. And then, I got him since then. So he's been somebody that really been, I guess, my partner who's been helping me, grow. But I guess that's probably why, I'm not by myself. I guess that's what, I'm not by myself now. So that's why I'm less angry, I would say. So
I think it's also interesting to hear you say that, and we can work through this, like I said, is that what I'm hearing you say is that a lot of the times when you say, I don't have that support, I don't have an extended family, I don't have information, I don't have no one to lean on, and when things get rough, you start to think about who's responsible for the trajectory, right? And you associate that with Wanda. But I'm gonna challenge you because everything in your life happened for a reason, Mona.
Absolutely.
And I think I don't like to hope for things that I don't know what they are. Like I said, we would not have wanted to grow up in that household with that lady who was struggling with this addiction. That would have been that would have exposed us to a whole. our adoptive mothers
No,
aren't.
you never know. We
They're,
still, we don't know. We
I
could
don't
have
like.
been rich and famous. Somebody could have saw us and we could have been rich, famous. We don't
It
never
could have
know.
been, but I don't spend time thinking about what could have been. Like you in network marketing, you looking towards the future and everything that's possible, you have a direct impact on the trajectory and flow of moving forward. So you got to get out of
Absolutely.
that thinking that lady, that was the best thing she could have done for us.
Absolutely.
She realized I cannot provide for these kids in no type of way. I can provide for their health and their well-being. Hopefully somebody can do a better job. Because
Absolutely.
again, like as you see, I highly doubt she's living in a house with all her siblings and her grandparents. That don't sound like plausible to me, right? So we don't even know what kind of life we would have had with her. So you giving her a little too much credit, I feel.
I don't know. I
You
don't
giving her a
know,
little- you
girl.
how maybe think about how much deeper the hurt would have been to live in a house and still feel alone. You living with your mother and you feel alone. That's crazy. So I just challenge you to think about that because I know it's hard out here. You know it's hard out here. And of course, like Mona illuminated, yes, Mona, you know, I don't know. I never met Alice White's, Miss White's aunts and sisters, but I definitely grew up with older siblings. Again, like the generational gap in many ways definitely benefited us because we had people who went through a lot of this stuff before and had seen other people. And also they, like I said, my mother had adoptive kids before us. So they already had relationships with people and siblings who came into the family who weren't necessarily blood. And I have people I can call on in support when I need to, whereas Mona doesn't necessarily have that. So I definitely get in the ways we're different, and that's something to be admirable. She don't know all the stories, she don't know all the pain, she don't know all the ups and downs of it, but she doesn't need to because she knows that anytime anything happened to me, I can reach out to them if I really do need the help and support. And that's something for her to be able to see that, right? So Mona's been able to they even just create analysis on different family dynamics. Like, oh, like look what's happening over here. Look at what I don't have. And you learned that way early. You said you was 11 when you started to feel like, dang, like my siblings left me when I kind of needed them the most in those developmental years, and you felt alone really early. So anytime that's gonna be a traumatic feeling anyway for you to feel alone, which is why it makes you a people person as well, because you associate like just bad things with just being alone. Like it's a feeling you don't adhere to, which is not uncommon with a lot of adopted kids. It's not uncommon. Also, we need to start reading more books about it from adoptees, because not that we will like it's going to be our experience, but we can start to relate some of our emotional intelligence to that. Like, oh, like I could see the same ways, like I feel those ways sometimes when that's triggered, or going into the childlike us. Because most of the time as we grow up, like I said, this childhood is about healing as well. So we're even healing the broken pieces of us long ago that were broken. Like I said, I had to pray through a lot. Like I really resonate, but when you said you really felt alone, a lot of the times, like it happened at night, me crying in my bed, because that's the time I could be alone. I was alone with God. So I used that time to cry it out, to really wrestle with a lot of those feelings. And I found a lot of healing in him talking back to me to say, I love you. You're my child. Look what's going on around you. And I was like, whoa, okay. And then when I started to do research on how the effects of cocaine actually affects babies, I began to be grateful to just be alive, because a lot of babies do not make it under excessive drug
Yeah, I
use, and they don't
know.
make it without disabilities.
I
So
was one of the smallest babies, you guys. I was like 4 or 5 ounces or pounds. I mean, pounds. I was like one of the smallest. My mother said I could fit in her hand. I was so tiny.
that's crazy. But there are major effects that drugs can have on kids. And I was just like, thank God I am whole. I have all my face, because all my fingers, all my toes, I have function in my body. And yeah, I know I had the little scalp condition and stuff, but thank the Lord I overcame that. So it's just like, it's important, the story we tell ourselves, because they have a lot of impact on who we become and who we want to be, because we could have easily felt like worthless. Like Mona and I could have sat here today and be like, we feel unloved, unworthy, because we were given up at birth. And we could have been stuck in those feelings all day. But that's not you know, we're grateful enough to have people in our lives who said, no, like, you're worth something. Like, I chose you. Like, you know, and also another thing, I grew up in a safe environment as far as family dynamics, because people get adopted and they go to homes that are outrageous.
Yeah, man, we was lucky, man. My mother, Alice White, knew Miss Colleen, her mother, so they were friends and they used to work in a daycare together. My mother worked at that daycare for 20 plus years. She's retired. I don't remember how long Miss Colleen was working there or anything, but they met there, and my mother actually hooked up with Miss Colleen and asked Miss Colleen to take Cheyenne when she knew that she couldn't get her. So it's just crazy, like Sharon said in the last episodes, like be mindful of who come into your life because you never know why they are there.
So, you know, we're going to end this episode on that note. Yeah, this was a real deep episode. I know it wasn't easy for Mona as well.
I
Because
can feel it.
you were getting emotional. I was getting emotional because I know exactly like what's that's like. And it's so crazy. You had that a little later in your life, but also I felt that way in a lot of ways, but it wasn't necessarily directed to the whole mother situation. It's just me feeling alone in general. That was just like my time in college, being away from family. And again, like, of course, like, I have siblings that are educated, and my mother started school, but she couldn't necessarily help me while I was there. So there's a lot of ways that you could feel alone in that, like, yeah, you know, they could support you in these ways, but it's not like they could do it for you. So you still out there trying to figure it out.
Right. At least when they peoples, they feel like they're obligated, but nobody really cared to. Anyway, yes, I think you guys get the point. Yeah, we just coming to you guys humbly and sharing our story with you guys. We're just so happy and we're so grateful that you guys are tuning in every time we put up an episode, whether it's a week from now or tomorrow, because we feeling this and we hope you guys feel it. We're giving it to you real, we're giving it to you raw, and this is the Chidulthood of 2020.
We'll see you all later. Thank you for listening.